Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at Ask Adam Torres. And to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Trey Fairman on the line, and he's founder and senior consultant over at Waypoint Retirement Advisors. Trey, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Glad to be here.
All right, Trey. So it's kind of fun for me today. Got two suits on the show, right? And I'm excited to talk about today's topic. So we'll get into the nuances, really, of retirement plans, retirement planning. Specifically, I know there's a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives out there. They're either in retirement plans and they're thinking like, am I in the correct retirement plan? Am I offering the right plan for my employees? And then some people they just haven't done a review in a long time, and things change and they maybe are a little bit out of connection there. Or there's other people that are just saying, hey, I'm at that point. I need to set up a retirement plan for my company. So we'll go into a lot of different scenarios there, and we'll talk about some other things. And I'm going to have a lot of fun. The people that have been watching the show for a long time know my background as a financial advisor in the past. So I'm excited to go down memory lane with you today. But just to get us kicked off, so I'd like to start with our signature question, if you will. So Trey, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Trey, what mission matters to you?
Well, I would say, if I really had to kind of peg it, a big concept with us is to, be intentional about choices. So I would say that I'm on a mission to help employers and their employees make well-informed, proactive, intentional decisions about their 401k plans.
Man, that's awesome. Love bringing these mission-based entrepreneurs and businesses on the line and introducing them to my audience. So let's just dive right in. So how'd you get started on this path into financial services and into what you do?
Yeah, so, I sort of come at retirement planning from a different angle, and you really got to kind of, rewind, I guess. So when I graduated from college, I was a finance major. I always thought I would end up working at a bank. My best job out of college was a insurance brokerage office. So I was the inside salesperson, if you will. That was back in Philadelphia in 1993. And I was basically in charge of making outbound sales calls. It was the insurance industry, but we were sort of a niche company, and we would work a lot with accountants, attorneys, tax advisors, and sort of approach insurance planning from more of a tax angle. So my boss got promoted from Philadelphia to run the office in San Diego. He offered me a job. So we got to San Diego with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. So this was January 95. And, I never thought I'd be in the insurance business. So started looking around, went to law school in the evenings in San Diego. Graduated from law school, passed the bar, and that was in 2000. Went back to law school to get my graduate degree, and I was actually at a firm at that time when we partnered with most of the very large Wall Street firms, private banks, and trust companies, doing more high net worth estate tax planning. And if you kind of think about the world, especially in San Diego, in the turn of the century, early 2000s, a lot of wealth was moving there. Estate taxes were very archaic, so there was a lot of evolution there. So I got lucky, if you will, I guess, timed it well, and, had a pretty good run with that. So, up until, about 2016, I guess, that was my job. I, again, partnered with advisors working with very high net worth clients to help them with sophisticated estate tax planning strategies. And it all really changed for me in the spring of 2016. I had just finished speaking at the national conference for the American Medical Association to a bunch of doctors in Orlando, Florida. I was out in the lobby grabbing some coffee, and in rapid fire, about 10 or so doctors came up to me, and every single one of them had what's called safe harbor 401k plan. So again, I've always thought of myself as a tax planner. So, I had dabbled and done a little bit of that stuff in the past, and over, as I just said, over that 15, 20 years before, I had sold my business to a publicly traded firms and, worked with a lot of, again, tax attorneys for that, worked with a lot of business owners. And, by partnering with advisors, accountants, I understood that plain vanilla probably doesn't work all the time. So here I had all these doctors. They each owned a dialysis center or a surgery center. They were making, $700,000, $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And they all had a safe harbor 401k plan, which means in plain English, they could save about $59,000. And I said to every one of them, I said, hey, if you could save more, would you, right? So the back of the envelope rule of thumb is you need to save about 10% of your pre-tax income. And they all said, geez, Trey, yeah, I would love to, but my investment advisor says I can't. My accountant says I'm not able to. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, no, actually you can. And I kind of, I remember vividly their faces as I said, look, if we do this properly, you can put away about $240,000 a year, maybe double that. And so that was kind of a big experience, I call that a, eye-opening watershed event for me where it was very puzzling to me. I said, wow, these are, educated people. They're mm-hmm. paying for financial advice and they're really not getting the complete picture. So again, this was in the spring of 2016. When I got back from that trip, like I do, I have which we'll touch on later, but I have a side hustle, I call it, being a expert witness in financial litigation matters, which means I'm really good at reading a bunch of stuff and researching ideas. So anyway, jumped right into that. And basically what I learned is that most advisors and most clients are just offered the same generic cookie cutter plan. Mm-hmm. And, heck, if it's anything outside of the box, people are like, I don't know what to do. And it was again, curious because what I was talking about, which is a pretty standard 401k profit sharing cash balance, what we call a combo plan, works much like a cascading waterfall, if you will, right? So you fill one bucket up, you go to the profit sharing bucket, you fill that up, then you go to the cash balance bucket, you fill that up. Those plans had been around for a long time. And I know you and I joked before, the Pension Protection Act of 2006 changed a lot of that. Oh. And it was right. And it was not a secret what was going on. But so I jumped into that, did all the research I could, talked to as many contacts as I had in the investment industry, and basically kind of confirmed what I saw, which is there was just a big need in that area. So at the same time, the state tax laws were getting better, meaning more and more liberal, right? So less and less people needed estate tax planning. So, and I had found myself doing more and more income tax planning. So as a result, I just kind of started focusing more on this, ramped it up, and had great timing, right? Launched in January 2020, Waypoint, so full-time 401k advisor during the shutdown. But things have been good. So, I would say quickly here, I just try to focus on, because this was my experience, what a good plan looks like. Because it was always very interesting to me. And I actually have a book that I'm going to be putting out here next few weeks that looks at the 6 key components of a good 401k plan. Because it's, again, not rocket science, but when I was doing the research, I asked people, what does a good plan look like? And you get some fluffy answers, right? But you're like, that's not very actionable. So, again, I kind of came at this from a different angle, more of a sort of fiduciary oversight plan governance concept. Yeah. And, in mutual funds are the easiest part of this conversation. There's, we would say there's actually 6 key components, but the industry as a whole just had said, I'm an investment advisor, so I know a heck of a lot about 401k plans too, or business owners just assumed that was the case. Yeah. No, it's a great story. And one thing for everybody watching to know. So when it comes to financial services, it's complex. I was in the business almost 14 years, and I had the privilege of working on both sides of the business. So there's the institutional side, and then there's the retail side. The retail side is your everyday advisor that's working, face to face with the client. The institutional side is a little bit more complex. It has to do with retirement plans, retirement
plan construction. And it's just a little bit more complex. You're dealing with bigger numbers. You're dealing with a different set of clients. So one of the big challenges in the industry, and what Trey is explained, is that he has these group of doctors that, that were working with their advisor. Doesn't mean they had a bad advisor, to be very clear. Their advisor means well, they're doing their best work, but if they're not experienced with a little bit more of a complex retirement planning philosophy, which for Trey is easy. He says it's easy. Oh, it's common. It's this type of plan, and this is what you do, and you fill up different buckets. That's great. But if you'd only been on the retail side of the business, working with clients face to face, you wouldn't know that, because it's very complex, and the paperwork and the documentation and everything. It's not hard when you're working with somebody like Trey or his firm, because they're doing it day in and day out, but they are specialists. So that's the point. So there are different options out there, and there's even options above that, which Trey, I'm sure, is aware of, in terms of even more complex planning strategies that have to do with other things that are probably a little bit more in depth than this conversation will go today. But that being said, don't worry, at the end, I'll give Trey the opportunity to leave the contact information and that stuff if you want to follow up. So don't worry about that. But that's the main thing. It's more systemic. It has more to do with how the industry is set up overall. It doesn't mean that the firm is trying to do a bad job, or the advisor is trying to do a bad job, or anything like that, or vice versa. It's just that there's so many products, so many different routes a person can go, that there's not even a clear, concise, like unified answer on even what a financial advisor is, or what their scope of being a financial advisor is. So you have to think about the US and the financial system as a whole really as an evolution. What a financial advisor did in the 70s or 60s, guess what? There was no such thing. The term wasn't made up yet. So that just gives you an idea of the evolution of it and of wealth management, and what even wealth management is. So these are just different things that I'm giving you, so that as you kind of progress through your financial, career, or your financial, situation, you really consider the different types of people that you're bringing into your life and that you're getting your advice from, because there is a difference, and these can make substantial differences. So for example, that doctor example that Trey used, they were doing 56,000 or so in there. So they were saving or deferring, depending on how things are set up, 20 some thousand in taxes, depending again on how they're set up. And I'm rounding here. So you have to consult your own financial advisor to be clear in your own compliance in this. I'm not putting words into Trey's mouth. I'm just giving you some simple math to consider. Well, if he's got them in a type of plan where they can put away 260,000 or in that area or range, now they're saving or deferring upwards of 100,000 versus 25,000. Again, I'm rounding, and I'm doing some very simple math. So don't anybody watching this start commenting on the videos. Oh, yeah, Adam, it's this. I know, okay, it's fine. I just want you to start thinking that in general, there's a big difference from deferring 25,000 to 100,000. That's a big difference in a tax bill any way you split it. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah. And then if I can jump in a quick second. So then the other thing I get, sort of the pushback, right, is, well, I have to put money aside for my employees. And the answer is yes, you do. Mm-hmm. But again, with the rule of thumb, so I'm a big believer in what I call the back of the envelope, right? So the rule of thumb is 6 to 8% of your employees' annual income, right? So to get to go from 59,000 to 260 or 300, it's going to cost you, depending on your employees, an extra 40,000 a year. That may make tons of sense. Yeah. It may make no sense, right? So back to kind of what we said in the beginning, let's try to focus on making well-informed, intentional decisions. And it is definitely not right for everybody, but it fits. And again, really, the other kind of tagline, if you will, that I use all the time is, look, the retirement plan industry has evolved from a casual investment conversation to a much more regulated fiduciary oversight process. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be scared of anything, but it's just changing. So just like you said, Adam, I think that's a great point that, hey, just like we do a lot of things in life, let's just check on it, make sure things are going well, and maybe you're all set up. We can do better sometimes too.
So let's go further into Waypoint Retirement Advisors. So have to ask you the question, why start another retirement planning firm for employers for complex or even retirement plans? So what's your vision?
Yeah, well, again, I would say that, so kind of two things, right? So again, I was working with Wall Street firms in the investment advisors for these 20 some odd years. So I was very familiar with how those conversations went. I then had that personal experience, right? And then on top of that, and this will probably hit home with you also, all I kind of heard was 401k plans are all about what are called funds and fees, right? These two things. And again, as I just alluded to, the reality is the world's changing, and that's good. So really here, what's next for us, as I mentioned, is I'm just kind of putting the final touches on a book here. We would say that a good plan has 6 key components. So again, we've talked about funds and fees. We would call that the investment options and then the plan costs. But then there are kind of 4 other areas too, which would be fiduciary oversight, plan design and tax strategy, which we just chatted about, plan operations, and then educational programs. So I think kind of what's next, we call that our R6 or retirement 6 process. Just a name I made up. It's not, again, rocket science or anything genius, but just helping people understand what a good plan looks like and then helping them kind of start on the path. Because I think long gone are the call me when you need me retirement plan advisors. Who, again, that is not their focus. They are well-meaning and they step in to help when they're asked. But again, because of a lot of different factors, structuring these ERISA plans, 401k clearly, and we see that bleeding over to other areas in the what's called the 403b space. Just again, making well-informed, intentional decisions or choices about what you have, and sometimes not changing at all is the best decision to make.
So let's talk a little bit more about your user experience, if you will, and what it's like to work with you and your firm, like what it looks like. Because a lot of times people, they accept the status quo of either what they're already doing just because they're used to it. It's comfortable. And they're like, it was hard enough setting this thing up in the first place. I had to deal with this many meetings and this. I'll think about it later. I'll get to it later. Like that's, in my opinion, what keeps most employers, myself included, even though now I'm on the other side of the coin. Like I should be reviewing things from doing it. You're just busy and you're thinking about like, do I have time to do this, and this? What does that look like to you?
Yeah. So again, that was another kind of interesting thing, right? So when I got started, right, talking to employers, becoming part of the RFP process, they're going out to bid, which a plan should be doing every 2 to 3 years. So again, story. This was actually my first 403b plan. So again, 403b is just like a 401k, but for nonprofit organizations. So I was kind of late into this conversation. I, in fact, was the 4th advisor. I had been referred to the business manager at this private school. We were just talking like we were. This again is really all about goals and kind of what's broken or where do you want to get to. And she said to me, well, look, Trey, we don't want to move platforms, okay, which would be called the record keeper. So when it comes to a 401k plan, the easiest, most visible party is the company that has the website, right, sends out the statements. That's called the record keeper. And I said to her, and I chuckled, and I said, what are you talking about? No one's saying you need to leave the record keeper. I can help you. I can get in, if you, sign a form or 2, I can become the advisor on the plan and then do what I call fix the plan from the inside out. Because most plans have access to good investment, have access to low fees, have access to what they need, maybe not to become a really good plan, but to dramatically improve. So what I kind of ran across was, don't, which is what I used to say to my boys when they were little, don't create chaos. Yeah. If we're going to try to help you and fix this, I have no idea why I would come in and the first thing that I'm trying to get you to do is massively disruptive and chaotic. Let's not do that. Let me get in under the hood. Let me get out in front of your employees, make sure they understand what a great thing you, the employer, are doing, right? So, kind of put the employer in the best light. It'll take me 30, 45 days to kind of get under the hood and figure out what's going on. Then come back to the employer and say, hey, if I was you, I would do this, this, and this. And that's usually not complicated. It's not difficult. And you can do it at the record keeper. So we strongly discourage, again, creating the chaos. Now, interestingly, and I've got 2 of them now, they'll push back really hard. I want to get out of here. And one of them we were just chatting with last week was at a record keeper that was a very large insurance company, right? Which is a lot of those insurance companies are kind of old school technology. And that insurance company had just sold their whole retirement plan business to a new cloud-based record keeper. Wow. So their problem actually already got fixed. And they were trying to convince me they wanted to change as of January 1st, coming up, 2022. And I said, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage because I don't know your company and I don't understand what your goals are. This is only the second conversation.
Yeah.
I said, but I got to tell you, I think most of your problems already got fixed. And then contrast that to their current advisor and the other advisor they had talked to were like, you got to switch. And I said, look, I'm not going to tell you that switching won't help you. But if I met you on the sidewalk and you said, what's the best record keeper for a 401k plan? The answer I would have given you is where you are now. So again, just kind of thinking about, again, the other phrase that we use a lot is pause and hit rewind, where you see a lot of people, and this is true in many areas in the world, right? People jumping in, they want to talk about themselves, their accolades, and whatever product they're selling. We would say, and I firmly believe, that it's not about me. And I'm happy to tell you all about my background, but that's not important. What's important is to listen. And we actually use cards. So that 6 key component list that I read to you, we actually have 6 cards that if we're doing a Zoom call or we're sitting in front of a CFO, for instance, we actually put those on the desk. And we have them kind of order them, or we talk about each one. And it kind of helps walk through the process of what their good plan looks like. Because for me to show up and jump right in and say, oh, this is what I think you should do, or just because you're unhappy, you need to create chaos, I don't think serves anyone well, and definitely doesn't serve the employees well. So again, trying to create the win-win, it's pause, hit rewind, and let me just listen, because I'm not the oldest guy in the world, but my crystal ball broke a long, long time ago. And I'm not going to assume that what I think makes, even if maybe like you too, Adam, I mean, when you do this long enough, you kind of know what the best solution is. But more times than not, when I keep my mouth shut, I'm wrong. And that's okay. So, I mean, that's really, I think, the other eye opener, if you will, is, just kind of, let's just pause here and just talk about it, and then figure out. Now, COVID and the pandemic and a lot of other things in the world, sometimes that's hard to do. That's easy. But that really goes a very long way when you're thinking about, again, what a good plan looks like.
No, that's great. And a great point you bring up about the record keeper and not having to change it. So that means, and that'd be a big thing. Like some people are like, oh, but I love my Vanguard. I love my Charles Schwab. I love my Fidelity. What it means is that you can keep your company, and Trey and his team can many times be a record keeper or be an advisor on the plan. So you don't have to necessarily move it. I mean, that's a great point that you make, because I think that's another big deal for many employers when they're thinking about like whether they're going to work with different companies or if they're going to get their plan reevaluated. Tell me a little bit more about like the employee education side, because that's another part that I just feel is so crucial to that overall relationship. And by the way, I don't mean just the relationship between the plan and the advisor. I mean between kind of taking off some of the weight off the shoulders of the employer and the employee, because that can be a lot. Like you don't want your employee going to you for every question. I mean, that's more time and more things that you have to know, or even onto your HR department if need be. Like you want to have that correct relationship to where, their needs are getting met and it's taking the weight off of your shoulders.
Right. So that So we're going to talk about education programs. Before I jump into that, I'll say that almost gets, there's a lot of overlap here, right? That gets to plan design too, because really the goal becomes matching the demographics of the company with the plan design and the record keeper, right? So if you have a bunch of 25-year-old young employees, we're going where you should ultimately be a record keeper that has a great mobile platform.
Yep.
Again, sort of like what I was talking about earlier. That's typically not an insurance company.
Yeah.
So, that's one. But when it comes to actual education, we actually have two tracks. So we do employee education, which pretty much, record keepers do that as a generic offering, which has some technical reasons why. We don't manage individual money. So it's not like I'm trying to solicit them for their outside money. But that goal becomes, understanding basic investment concepts, investment education, how the plan works. As you mentioned, what mutual funds are good, how to analyze the funds, what a target date fund is, which is a newer thing in the world. So that's that. And then we go above and beyond for the employees in what's called a financial wellness offering, if that employer would like. We have solutions that aren't tied to any record-keeping platform. So again, typically employee education is provided by the record-keeping platform. Advisors sometimes do it, but it's often the record keeper. So if the record keeper has a generic program, which many of them do, just because they're not in that education business, there are third parties out there that we can plug and play into that. And what's great about that is, as we all know, right, when you're in a group of your peers and you have a question, you may be concerned about asking a stupid question, so you don't really ask. Even one-on-one with employees, you can't, like I said, I can't always pause and listen and really get to the meat of the matter. So what's good about these financial wellness programs are a lot of them have, tens and tens of hours of online videos. They've got self-paced education programs. They have a toll-free number that you can call. And they really, the better ones, actually integrate with the company's employee benefits package. So when enrollment comes up, just like you were saying, as opposed to those employees having to call the HR director or in his or her office, which of course they're very happy to help their employees.
Of course.
This is another way that on Saturday, we've all been there, or Friday night in your PJs on the couch, you're like, oh, this question just popped into my head. How do I find this out? So that would be employee track. And then we do a employer track, which, kind of helps them, again, also understand what a good plan looks like. They're participating in the plan, so they're going to get all that same employee education too, but really understanding, again, this sounds basic sometimes, but I still see it, what the difference is between the record keeper and the administrator. Sometimes the record-keeping company, Vanguard, Fidelity, whoever, they may also be acting as the administrator. So we sort of talk about that. There are advantages to do that. Sometimes we unbundle it, it's called, and we put that with a third party to do that. And then we just talk about, hey, most, and this, I guess, is one of the pet peeves of mine. You have a lot of advisors that start out that, play the fear card, I call it. And I got a quick story on that in just a second. But they're calling employers saying, you don't have a ERISA bond. Well, the reality of that is it's a $50 fix. It's not a problem. Let's fix it. But of course, they're not there to help them fix the problem. They're there to scare them, to get in, to create the chaos, right? To move the plan to a different record keeper. So we help employers understand what a good plan looks like. The fact that at least one of them is a fiduciary, meaning they've got some specific, not burdensome, but specific tasks. And again, as I said in the beginning, don't be scared of your own shadow. There are ways that we can do that. And then, we would say, so whenever we're working with a plan, we're engaging as what's called a 321 fiduciary, which is the ERISA code section. But I would say the way I explain it is I sit next to that employer on the same side of the table as them, helping them understand what a good plan looks like and making sure everything is on track. And again, that conversation is a newer type of conversation because, again, as I mentioned, old school, casual investment conversation, call me when you need me, to a much more, regulated fiduciary oversight process. And employers, like that. And frankly, successful ones are going to find out sooner or later, because when they get 100 employees in their plan, it's going to get audited and all the things. And I just had that experience too, where an employer was trying to stay under that. So the old CFO had, I think it was 3 plans to keep the count under 100 at each plan. And then new CFO comes in and of course says, well, this isn't going to work. They aggregate it. And lo and behold, they had not done just a lot of the basic fiduciary oversight tasks that they needed to be doing, not just from yesterday, but from years and years ago. Now, was it a huge problem? No, not at all. So again, that's where that whole fear card gets played a lot. And just a quick example on that. One of our clients that most plans have what are called target date funds, which are do it for me type of fund. We don't need to go into the details, but they're very common. They're not perfect by any stretch.
Sure.
And most plans aren't either, but that's okay, right? So it's not okay, but that's okay. So we're watching it. We're going to help them. And just happened to be on the phone with this employer who was pretty upset because they just got a cold call basically from an advisor that said, your target date fund family is part of this lawsuit. That's obviously bad news. It had just been filed like the day before. So of course they were on our list to call too. But the reality of that situation is that lawsuit, like many ERISA lawsuits over the past 15 years, every single target date fund family was named in the lawsuit.
Yeah.
So it's not just the bad apple. It was, again, somebody calling, playing the fear card, rattling cages, creating chaos, and saying, "Oh, hold on a second. Nobody likes that news. I get it. But, here's how we already monitor that, right? I mean, so benchmarking, and we're probably going to chat on that a little bit, but we're constantly watching these things, and that's what a advisor helps with these things. Understanding what a good plan looks like, and if that fund family doesn't work because it's named in the lawsuit, and we got to switch, great. Yeah. But the top 10 fund families, they were all named. So I explained.
That's a lot of money. That's trillions of dollars.
Right. Yeah. And it's not going away.
No.
Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. It's not perfect. But it's like, I don't know where you'd like to go. We can not have a target date fund family offering. But again, all the big plans have them. And I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So again, that's the well-informed, intentional choices that we help employers with.
So tell me what it looks like, because I know there's some people watching this right now that they're like, maybe they haven't been, doing exactly what they need to be doing in terms of the compliance end of reviewing their plan. Maybe they haven't, they're not even familiar with things like benchmarking per se, or they're like getting bigger and a bigger plan. And they're kind of like, okay, they need to start paying more attention to this, so to speak. Like, do you offer, like, what do you offer? What does it look like to start the process of seeing if it makes sense to work with you? Do you offer like an audit? Do you offer like a review? Like, what's your terminology for how you help a plan evaluate what they're doing in order to maybe see if it makes sense to work with you and your team?
Yeah, so I would say, again, we're a little bit unique in this, right? So we come at this from the different angle. The first conversation is very much usually a 20 or 30-minute chat, which is kind of what's going on in the industry. Our beliefs, right, which is what we talked about. There are really 6 key components of what a good plan looks like. And then, we would then sort of go to the next part of that conversation, which is what's important to you. That's the pause, rewind.
Yeah.
And some people are like, I just need someone to check my plan, right? And I would say, okay, we do have that, and I would call that benchmarking light. Which is again, just looking at the funds and fees. So, I mean, we are constantly benchmarking our plans, and we actually have 4 different levels of benchmarking. So the initial one is the benchmarking light, kind of the quick look. Yeah. Show me what your funds are doing performance-wise relative to their peers, because that's important. And what are the costs relative to the peers, right? So it's not just, is it expensive or not expensive.
Yeah.
You have to always consider costs. Are they reasonable? Which is, what's the benefit for that person?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one option, that kind of quick benchmarking light. And then again, employers should put that in their file, because they really should be benchmarking every 2 to 3 years. But our model then for onboarding is we do quarterly video statements, which is a benchmarking of the funds as a performance for the whole plan.
Yeah.
And then we have what's called a plan analysis and review, or what we call PAR report, every 12 months, which is a more detailed benchmarking, looking at participation rates, bells and whistles, if you will, plug-ins to what the modern trends are, what you should be thinking about. Like target date funds was an example. When those came out, that's a really good thing to have. And then every 2 years, right? So we've got the quick hit, we've got the quarterly, we've got the PAR every year.
Yeah.
And then every 2 to 3 years, so 24 to 36 months, we're doing what's called a live bid benchmarking, which is we're actually taking that specific plan, their specific data, and we're going out into the market, and we're not only rebidding it at their current record keeper, which earth-shattering, right? Why would people really do it? Right? Well, of course I'm going back to them, because they need to know
of course
I'm talking to 5 or 6 other ones. So then we're doing that too. So I would say that, as a general rule of thumb, the person in charge of a plan needs to be following what's called a prudent process. What does that mean? And I walk through that in my book. But what that means is you just need to be acting reasonably. So the answer to that question is every 2 to 3 years, you need to take a look under the hood and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Is a good plan checking a lot more than that? Absolutely. Like I said, we're doing it quarterly, we do it annually, and then we're doing the live bid, real deal every 24 to 36 months.
Man, this is awesome, Trey. Well, I have to tell you, I can talk retirement planning all day long. It's one of my favorite things. I'm just a retirement plan nerd. It's fun to me. Everybody watching this already knows I get a retirement planner on here. It's going to be game time. So Trey, that being said though, if somebody's watching this right now, they're an employer, they want to review, they want to think about, like, if some of those benchmarking concepts you mentioned, if they're not doing those, if a lot of the things that we talked about just kind of have, sparked their interest, what's the best way for people to follow up and to connect with you and your team?
Yeah, so I would say two ways, and the second one's probably more helpful. So first is LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. Try to be as active as I can be there. So articles, postings there. You can read more about my background, sort of who I am, what I'm trying to do here. And then the other one would be go to the website goodplan.info. So GOOD plan, PLAN, all one word, .info, which is a site that I have where I share monthly best practices about, again, what a good plan looks like. So that's a place you can sign up, 2, maybe 3 times a month, sometimes 1 time a month.
Yeah.
There'll be a article that I think's interesting. I typically write all of the content. So
awesome.
If everything I've said today sounds like I'm a total knucklehead, then you probably don't want to sign up for that. If it's interesting, then yeah, you can do that for sure. So that would be probably the other site. And candidly, that's what we would do with, most people that we run into. So look, sign up for that. Hopefully that helps. Look, plans really change statistically. Only about 8% of plans change every year. So it's not a lot of them, frankly. There's good reasons for that and bad reasons for that. So really my concept and my thought in this is I've got, as we've sort of talked about, a lot of diversified, broad experiences over the years working with banks, trust companies, investment advisors. So that kind of puts me, I think, in a somewhat unique spot to kind of share themes and trends that I've seen along the way. And I've, again, because I like to write and I kind of research, because I'm a geek that way too, I've sort of collected all those. So that website, plan.info, is where you can see all that stuff.
Fantastic. Well, Trey, I have to say, it's definitely been a pleasure having you on the show today, and really enjoyed our conversation and you bringing your expertise to my audience and really giving us an overview of the entire retirement plan landscape and what employers should be thinking about as they watch this. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget, especially if you're a first-time listener or viewer, hit that subscribe button. We definitely want you to be a return visitor and a return guest. And Trey, thanks again. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you. I've had a ton of fun. It's been great. Thanks.